Gaurko lehenengo hizlaria Europako hizkuntza gutxituetan aditua da. Bere ikerketa eremu nagusia hizkuntza zeltak dira. Eurolang erakundeko zuzendaria da. Kontinente zaharreko hizkuntza minorizatuen egoera aztertu eta haien egoera hobetzea helburu duen agentzia. Zuekin guztiekin, Davyth Hicks.
Thank you. Let's get this talk ready. Euskarabildua. My name's Davyth Hicks. My voice is disappearing this morning. Can I just check that you can all hear if you don't understand English, because I need to deliver this in English because my Basque is terrible. Could I check that you can hear the translation? I'm not sure which channel it's on, but it's working, yeah? Yeah? Okay, good. Right. Yeah, my name's Davyth Hicks. I'm from Eurolang and also representing the European Language Equality Network, which replaces EBLO. This is what I'm going to talk about. The achievements so far with lesser used languages and technologies, the increasing importance of the net and technology, have a case study with Welsh, looking at some research findings that are just been they've not been published yet, just come out. Developments in Europe, European perspectives, challenges that we all face as less used language speakers, problems, some suggested solutions, and to end with some recommendations. So first of all, just to tell you a bit about what we do in Brussels, I run Eurolang, which was originally EBL's news service. We work to advocate for less used languages at the European and international level. We became our own NGO in 2010 with a mandate from most of the former EBL committees. One of our roles at the moment is to work as the secretariat for the Parliament Intergroup on national minorities and languages. We set up the new organisation, the European Language Equality Network, in 2011. And that's the EBLO members, Eurolang, and many young language activists from across Europe. And we work very much in the field of securing linguistic rights. And so, yes, we're both registered as NGOs, and we work with the Parliament, the Council of Europe, the UN and UNESCO, and different organisations and platforms that they run. Now, I think it's always useful to look at the European languages. Firstly, because languages never seem to stay within state borders. They often overlap, and they're a kind of an organic thing, not restricted by state borders. So I think it's always worth it to look at a map just to remember the kind of scale and what we're talking about. And also, this map's not necessarily very good because obviously with Cornish, not everybody in Cornwall speaks Cornish. I'm Cornish and well, partly Irish, but this map is not necessarily accurate, but it does show where these languages are. So it's always worth to consider that. Now, if we go to defining what we have, there's nearly 60 so-called minority languages in Europe. There's about 55 million people, that's 10% of the European Union population, who speak a lesser used language. So always remember that figure. It's a very useful figure to remember. 10% of the EU population. That's a lot of people. That's the size of a large member state in population. Now in continental Europe, that is going up to the Urals, It's estimated there's 330 different nationalities with over 100 million, nearly 14% who live as a national minority. And when I say LULs, I'm referring to lesser used languages. Now, coming on to today's topic, technology and lesser used languages, David Crystal, who's a famous sociolinguist, said, the progress of a language is linked to the use of technology by its speakers. So obviously, if we're going to have progress in developing and regenerating our languages, technology is going to play an important part. And we can look at some of the achievements. We've got things like digital TV, children's TV. We have that in Welsh. Social media, language learning resources, speech recognition. We have things like Twitter, Facebook, and Google Translate in some of the regional languages, not all of them. We have things like Welsh television, Bertan radio stations. People like Eurotalk are now doing language courses on CDs and DVDs. You can do it in Cornish. And now we have this new phrase, glocalization, where things are global, but more and more services are being delivered in the local language. So this process is all very healthy, and it's very good to see that. And we have, overall, these are figures from the UK overall, all of the countries in the UK, on the increasing importance of net and the IT. The youth, the young people, who are always going to be the future for the language, are increasingly switching off their TV and their mobile phones and using the internet. In 2011, more young people say they would prefer to give up watching television than doing without their mobile phones or the internet. Only 23% of 16 to 24-year-olds say they would struggle without a TV. 28% said they would miss their phone, and 26% the net. So that's like an overall figure. Now, I want to just focus on Wales, because we actually have some research just come in an area where there isn't much research. And now, if you see this map, we can see that the concentrations of Welsh speakers are mainly in the west and northwest. And these are areas where the communities speak, over 70% of the communities are just Welsh speaking. And this, when you get something like 60%, this seems to be like the critical mass point where a community will be Welsh speaking. If it falls beneath 60%, then the community tends to switch, or we see that English tends to predominate. Now, with Wales, like in the south, then in the southeast, you can see the majority of the population live there, but Welsh is the weakest. So obviously the southeast of Wales is like the target area to increase the number of Welsh speakers. Now, already Welsh medium schools are flourishing. That's been a success. In 1990, it became compulsory for children in English medium schools to learn Welsh up to the age of 14. 2001 census recorded that 40.8% of all school children between the ages of 5 and 15 can speak Welsh. So in 2012, we're waiting for the new census result, but that 40% are now 15 to 25. So demand is going to be high for anything with using Welsh with new technologies and social media. Now, recent research has published these findings. The increase in the percentage of young people able to speak Welsh has coincided with these technological changes. Now, as a developed country, Wales has been able to adopt and use these technologies as they've emerged. And most young speakers now, and I'm sure you find the same thing here in the Basque Country, are growing up and having never known a world without the internet and mobile phones. For them, new media is no more new than television, radio, or cinema was to my generation. It's part of their everyday experience and embedded in their everyday lives. And despite growing recognition that young people and technology are critical for the future of the Welsh language, we have very little data, very little research on the subject. And this lack of evidence causes problems in terms of monitoring trends, identifying demand, planning interventions, and importantly, creating new language policies. And to refer to this recent study, which I hope will be published soon, and when it is published, I'll make sure that everyone here receives a copy of it. This explored the use of social networking sites, such as Facebook, by young Welsh speakers between 13 and 18 in Welsh medium schools. It took 200 school children from 4 schools, and it provides an insight into the perception and use of Welsh language in these popular applications. Now, the use of social network is pervasive, with only 6 of the 200 pupils reporting that they didn't use it. So Facebook was used by 87% of them, YouTube by 76%, and MSN by 70%. And what are the results? Well, the importance showed that when you have a critical mass in a community, i.e. one of those northwest Wales areas, then it reflects the amount of social media used. So if the community already is a Welsh language-speaking community, then they'll use Facebook in Welsh. So more use is made of Welsh in Facebook in the northwest, and that reflects this critical mass. But in the southeast, where it's an English-speaking community, even though they know Welsh, practically no Welsh was used as a social language by the young people in the study. But overall, 44% of them said they would either mainly use Welsh or you would use Welsh and English equally on Facebook. So that's interesting because that goes back to the 40% that we know that have learned Welsh. But this is a huge figure because if you take Wales, something like only of the entire population, only 21% speak Welsh. But this is like 44% of them using Welsh on Facebook. That's a huge shift into using Welsh. And that's been because of Facebook. So it's very interesting to see that figure. Obviously, we can still build on that because of South East Wales and penetrate those communities where they're not speaking Welsh, but I think this is still very encouraging. And this is what some of the people said. This is translated from Welsh. Our Facebook is a Welsh section of the internet where our friends speak Welsh. So you can imagine it's kind of like a little world, a little area where they know they can use Welsh. So the psychology of having Welsh language as part of the internet is important because they can see that normally they see the internet as something that's mainly an English domain. So there's a shift because they can see they can also be Welsh. One question to be asked is how can we grow the Welsh language section of the internet so that young people consider other parts of internet to be a space where Welsh can be used. The perception of Facebook as a Welsh space, which is what's happening now, has evolved naturally and organically through the use rather than by any intervention. It's coming up from the bottom, it's bottom up from the community instead of top down from the government. And this may be an important element of its success and sense of ownership, which is crucial, by young Welsh speakers. So what do we have is the creation of a cyber Vro Cymraeg, a cyber Welsh heartland, where the heartland could stay together even if people travel. And it strikes me with the video from before, with the Basque cycling site, is it possible, can we create a cyber Euskarabildua, where there's a virtual Basque country, which is online, and people can move around in that and socialize and everything like this, all in Basque. Not really, they could be in America and do it. So, this is like a very interesting development and something I think that we should develop. And it also backs up the importance of things coming up from the community. One of the female participants noted that if a Facebook interface was in Welsh, that is, all the bits around the edge of Facebook, then she would be more likely to use Welsh when writing her status updates. She said, because I see everything in Welsh around me. So again, this is things that we need to work on all our websites and things like this. And what developments do we have elsewhere? There's things like Androisig, which is converting software into Breton, and they're just doing it. They have no money or backing, and they're just doing it voluntarily. There's things like Coder Dojo, which is making programming easy. Started off in Ireland, it's now moved into Welsh. We have more language courses and things like Eurotalk, which have done things in Cornish. And you can see websites like OAPA, which has Sami language courses. I don't really want to go into too much detail on this because obviously there's like language technologies and language industries developing everywhere. But it's just to give you a taste of it, and I'm sure like there's other things that you can think of that we have in Basque or maybe in Catalan. And what are the European perspectives? This is something that we work on in the Parliament and with the Commission. There's lots of developments going on here which you need to be aware of because also it's something you can take advantage of. And I just need to have a quick drink of water. Is it, actually, I'm not going too fast, is it okay? Can you understand the translators? Yeah? It's okay? The interpreter's not waving at me, it's okay? Yeah, okay, because normally I speak too fast, you know, so, okay. Now, we have the thing called the new Erasmus for All program. This is the thing that's going to replace Comenius, Erasmus, and the lifelong learning program. This is going to be worth, the Commission tells me, 19 billion euros. And languages are going to be one of its 6 priorities. So it's a huge amount and a huge investment in their policies on multilingualism. There's other programs that could also be approached by organisations here, such as the regional program with the Basque government, because we believe at European level, I mean, with our organisation, that language cross-cuts. You know, language isn't just in education and culture, language is in industry, language is in fishing, it's in farming. You know, everyone uses languages all the time, so there should be languages policies for that. So, you know, all this is what's important. And people in the Commission, both at cabinet level and within, have confirmed that project proposals that promote lesser used languages and use new technologies would be very easily supported. They're very much in favour of these kind of developments. So it's a growth area for the EU. Obviously the EU cannot intervene on member state policy because member states reserve language policy to themselves, but it can act in areas in its competence, so things like adult education, preschool education, language learning generally, they can intervene on. And of course the Parliament is very supportive and has pushed through various measures. We've lobbied Parliament's supported, and it means that, you know, increasingly funding things for lesser used languages, non-member state languages, are becoming more and more available. And we really need to take advantage of this, and I think with the technologies we can, developing technologies. So what are the challenges? I would say digital divide, which works in many different ways. We must we're running to keep up with dominant languages. An organisation called MetaNet warned about digital extinction for most European languages in 15 years. We're already behind. There's a lack of research because people's behaviour is changing really quickly. It's like we're in the middle of a revolution. And there's developing problems with Facebook and Twitter, and an overall move away from, a move to online services. So instead of developing our own software. So what are the challenges? Number one, digital divide. This is a geographical divide between poor countries and rich countries, but I would also argue by age. You know, old people use the internet less than young people, and sometimes they don't know how to operate the internet in any language. But what about when you've got older Breton speakers or older Basque speakers who may only really know Basque and Breton? How are they going to deal with computers and things like that? So we have this problem. We have like a digital divide by wealth. You know, rich country or rich people are going to have like more access to the internet and new technology than poor people. And then I would argue that there's a digital divide by language status. So languages with high status, like English and Spanish, get more provision by software and things like this than smaller languages, including lesser used languages. So you see those divisions already. I mean, things like Catalan, which Albert will talk about more later, is actually not really a lesser used language. It's a huge language. It's like nearly 10 million speakers. It has a lot of these things, but still is not seen as an official member state language. So comes under the bracket of a minority language, even though it's got so many speakers as Swedish. So There's that, but on the other hand, there's the kind of the ordinary lesser used languages like Welsh and Basque and things like this, or even Irish, just doesn't get the provision that some of these big languages have. So, this is a problem and something we need to address. Now, this MetaNet network talked about digital extinction. Said most European languages are unlikely to survive in the digital age, they say. I don't necessarily agree with this, but it's something they said. They looked at 30 European languages. They looked at 30 European languages out of 80 total. They concluded, or their experts concluded, that digital support for 21 of these 30 is non-existent or weak at best. 21 of the 30 were placed in the lowest category, support is weak or non-existent. These include weak, the very most weakest, Icelandic, Latvian, Lithuanian and Maltese, state languages. And they received the lowest score in these 4 areas. Basque, Bulgarian, Catalan and Greek, Hungarian and Polish were actually better and had fragmentary support. So you can congratulate yourselves in the Basque country because you're actually doing better than many member state languages. And what other problems are there? Facebook, Twitter and Google. There's a move to online services, software as a service. Gmail instead of Mozilla. Thunderbird, Google Docs instead of LibreOffice, and there's all the social media. Just when we're beginning to catch up with tools like LibreOffice and Mozilla, people are shifting more and more to tools like Google Docs, online tools, which are mostly outside the community's control to develop or translate. And Google will say, right now, we're unable to support more languages. So what can we do? I mean, we've got other languages that we want to be able to use Google in. We can't do it because Google said so. That's not very good. And this trend puts control of the online linguistic landscape firmly back in the hands of big corporations, and it reinforces dominant languages. So this is a major problem for us and for the future. What other problems? Siri, predictive texting, speech recognition. There's the whole speed of technological development at the moment. Can we keep up? For example, with Siri, speech recognition. Lesser used languages only just getting the opportunity for a foot in the door with predictive texting. Predictive texting with the right framework for some of the smaller languages and the word list is doable. Speech recognition, a lot harder and more expensive. And I think it's going to be out of the reach for some of the smaller, lesser used languages. I think the big challenge for lesser used languages and a job for us in Brussels and for Eurolang and Ellen will be to work towards or achieve the situation where we can place legal obligations on producers of mass communication devices to provide equal support to all the European lesser used languages. I think that's important that we do that. So we need solutions and we need to plan for them as a matter of urgency. And what are some of these solutions that we could suggest? And I'm sure that you could suggest more. I'm not a technology expert, but there's technology experts here. We could develop more the open source approach among indigenous language groups. I mean, thinking about this globally for small languages around the world who are just starting out on software translation. If not everyone moves to online services. The community itself can maintain control and ownership of their work instead of having to rely on the goodwill of a big for-profit corporation. Or, the government autonomous community can help, like say the Basque government can help its language in that sense. We perhaps need to take control of the interface of things like Facebook and all that for the benefit of lesser used language communities. And maybe we should go for what's called the middle hanging fruit. And there's like the low hanging fruit that's easy to get. The middle hanging fruit's a bit more difficult but worthwhile, which would be a decent range of tools coupled with decent support and promotion. I think we need a language industry that clusters, that cross-cuts into all sectors. And I've been with the people from Languna, and it's really good to see this cluster, language industry cluster, being set up here. I think that's a breakthrough. The Basque, you've made in the Basque country, you've made another breakthrough in bringing language out of the education and culture network and putting it into industry, where we use language in the workplace. This is like really innovative, and it's really important, I think, now that we broadcast that and get other lesser used languages also to make language industries cross-cut into all other sectors. And mostly we need to plan ahead, as with everything, and look at the latest trends as people look to have more via their smartphone. Because more people, it's a personal experience. People are looking more, they're not going to have an iPad. I saw an article the other day saying, well, we want to have it more, everything delivered on our smartphone. Everything will be there. And then there's the bigger picture of language and technology. I mean, for me, technologies for language is not just speech recognition and things like that. It's like any technology that can be applied to languages. And we have to think about that and plan for it. And we have to think 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead, and 25 years ahead. And what do we want for our children? And think in these terms. Because otherwise, we're going to get left behind and people will not be using their language on the net. So some recommendations, just to finish. I would recommend, or we would recommend, that all government language planning agencies establish a section developing IT for their less used language immediately. I think this is really urgent. I think it's imperative that as IT development becomes a policy priority for all language planning departments, if the language has got that, not everybody has an autonomous government. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to build on the success of the immersion education. In the Basque Country in Wales, immersion education has been a huge success. But if kids are going to leave school at 16 and 18 and they can't see Facebook and Twitter in their language, they're going to start interacting in Spanish or English. And we're going to lose those kids. So I think it's crucial we have massive effort to digitize and make sure there's content for them online. It's imperative that we work to increase the amount of content online, prioritize digitization projects, because we've got loads of things from the past that we don't have digitized, plus more online TV, radio, magazines, the whole lot. And then launch a network to develop, to share best practice and to promote usage of new technology for less used languages. Now that's something that we can do, a European level network that looks at less used languages and new technologies and works to share best practice so we're not repeating the same thing. So if in the Basque Country you've just made this new thing, then we can use that maybe for Wales or for Ireland or for Scotland. So I would really strongly suggest that this new network will be launched and we can use European funding to help pay for that. And I'm talking to some people already here in the Basque Country about this. I think it should also include smaller state languages as well, because obviously things like Latvian, Lithuanian, and Estonian, hasn't got many more speakers than Basque, and they're struggling, and they're getting kind of excluded from the digital future. And then finally, we have some time for questions, but Basque is your language. You own it. And what would you like to see for your language? What do you see as the priorities? What things are missing? And where do you think you can build? So with that, Miraz, eskerrik asko, milesko. Thank you very much. Thank you to Ellie and everyone for organising this, and you've done a fantastic job. And it's, I cannot emphasise, I think, how important it is, this subject is. It's always brilliant to come to the Basque Country. It's one of my favourite places. It's always an inspiration. But I think at the moment, there's so many things that we need to work together on. But thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming. Mileska, eskerrik asko. Thanks.
Jarraian galderak egiteko aukera izango duzue. Jaso eskua eta mikrofonoa helaraziko dizuegu.
So is there questions now? Oh, right, so they all need a mic, wouldn't they? Or unless they talk to me in English. Any questions? Do they have a question? Yes. Is there a mic or okay. Microphone?
Hello, David. My name is Itziar. You have given to us very optimistic figures regarding, for example, Erasmus program and so on. But don't you think that considering the economical crisis we are going through, this is going to have a real effect on all the programs regarding minority languages in Europe? Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I was giving the figure. I mean, the 19 billion is the thing that the Commission has asked the Parliament for. I don't think they'll get 19 billion, but they might get something like 17. And not all of that's going for languages. And this is money that's for all languages right across the board. So it's not just lesser used languages. But it does mean there's going to be more money for projects that have languages in as a whole. So it's, probably it will end up being, and it is an increase, but it's not 19 billion. I mean, 19 billion was for the entire program, which is replacing lifelong learning, Erasmus, and all these things. And then only part of that is languages. Then a part of that will be regional languages. One of the problems we've had is that we've not been successful enough in getting together to make a pitch for this money. We've made it available, or Europe's made it available after lobbying, and say in 2001, we were 10% of the EU population, and we had 5% of the money. Last year, we had like 0.5% of the money. So we've not been effective in getting the money. And this is the thing, is that we need to kind of become better with our organisations at joining together and making a bid for this money. It's not a fair playing field because we're going up against the British Council, Alliance Française, and people like this. But I think, we're going to become better. So it's something else that we're working on. So. Any more questions? All right then. Okay. Thank you very much. Mileska.